Well, the piece is called Famous, which is based on a book, Famous for 15 Minutes My Years with Andy Warhol, which was written by Ultraviolet, whose real name was Isabelle Dufresne. She was a French heiress, but she was active in the Warhol factory and she was really very close to Andy Warhol. And after he died, she wrote this memoir about her years in the factory. John Walker was a very interesting man with whom I wrote 12 works, three stage works, but a lot of choral works. We had met in college at Cornell University in the 80s, and he I first worked with him on a piece in memory of Matthew Shepard, the young gay man who was murdered in Wyoming. We had a commission to write a choral piece, and he wrote a poem about Matthew Shepard, and then we wrote a piece about 9/11, and Chanticleer commissioned a piece about on the Martin Luther King, the 40th anniversary of his death. And so he was very much interested in writing works that were commenting on or memorializing important events that he saw as important. To talk about this opera in relation to John and the way it's written, the prologue, which we're going to hear, it was my idea actually to have a prologue, and I went into the forward of the book and I copied everything that she said and I constructed. She says, "I have a story to tell. Who was this man? He was a shy, near blind, bald, gay albino from an ethnic Pittsburgh ghetto who ruled the world of art for 2 wild decades." That's all her words. And then we go immediately into Moonstruck, which also contains dialogue between Andy Warhol and Isabel Ultraviolet, but also the librettist's kind of take on the late 60s and the age of Aquarius and what the kinds of things that people were reaching for. And then it ends up being kind of a paean to the moon, asking the moon, for guidance. "Oh moon, glorious moon, give us thy light, embrace us tonight," etc. So I guess there's the kind of opera. I don't think he knew Rusalka, but I think that the way he designed that scene with the image, it's a very dramatic scene of the moon landing in Central Park in 1969, with the presence of the actual moon, with Isabel having an assignation in the bushes with the rock star, which really happened, and kind of having their climax of that moment at the same time that the crowd in Central Park is having their climax of excitement over the moon landing. The music tries to deliberately evoke rock music, because, of course, the way rock came to dominate popular music in the 60s, was something that was really, it wouldn't be right to say it was disruptive, but it created, at one time, the best-selling records were all Broadway show records, and then the Beatles came along. And then it happened that the Beatles made their first movie, but the soundtrack for A Hard Day's Night made more money than the movie itself. And so rock music started to permeate everything. And I loved some rock and still do, but I did have a sense that the development of rock flattened out harmonic nuance certainly in Broadway. I think if you compare the kind of harmonic nuance that's in Richard Rodgers and others with like Alan Menken or even Lloyd Webber, you see there's a kind of flattening out that happened. And I wanted to evoke the spirit of rock, which I did in a kind of very deliberate way with a kind of steady eighth note ostinato, but I wanted to infuse it with what I hope is a kind of harmonic sophistication, to kind of reclaim it, hope that the rock genre will tag the era and the time